It had been 2 years since Anna left this world, but for Michael, time seemed forever frozen at that final moment. Every morning he still turned to his right out of habit, where Anna used to lie, her peaceful face close, her hand in his as if afraid that letting go would shatter their shared dream. Now only a cold, empty space remained on the bed, and a pillow that hadn't been indented in 2 years. Their small suburban home remained untouched, exactly as it had been when Anna was still alive. Michael kept everything the same, as though doing so would bring her back. Her beige slippers still sat neatly by the bedroom door. The pale blue ceramic mug she used for morning tea remained on the kitchen shelf. Once Michael nearly dropped it, but caught it in time, then sat down and cradled it in his arms, weeping like a child. The tiny hallway lights, Anna used to call them the stars of our little home, were still turned on each night. Michael didn't dare turn them off. It wasn't the darkness he feared. It was the loss of one more thing that belonged to her. People say time heals all wounds, but some pain doesn't disappear. It only changes shape. It lingers, quiet and hidden, like an underground stream beneath seemingly dry earth. Michael no longer cried the way he did in the beginning, but the sorrow hadn't lessened. It had simply transformed into a vast emptiness, covering his life in a silence that was almost terrifying. Michael's mornings began like a mournful ritual. He would sit at the table and stare at the empty chair across from him, the one where Anna used to sit, her hair slightly tousled, her eyes still sleepy, but always offering a gentle smile. Now all that remained was the bare wooden chair and an old faded tablecloth. He still brewed 2 cups of coffee, one for himself and one he placed in front of her. Once he whispered, "I can't stop missing you. Can you see me?" The house didn't answer. It was so quiet that the ticking of the wall clock felt like a blade slicing through memories. It was hard for outsiders to understand why Michael hadn't changed anything in the house, why he hadn't cleaned up, renewed it, or packed away Anna's belongings. But to Michael, the house wasn't a place to live. It was a place to keep a piece of memory, a piece of the person he had once loved more than life itself. Every pillow, every photo, every small scratch on the wooden floor was a fragment of Anna, and he feared that if he lost them, she would vanish completely. On weekends, Michael often went to the backyard, where Anna used to grow lavender. Now wildflowers had taken over, but the scent still lingered. He'd sit on the stone bench where she once read, close his eyes and imagine Anna beside him, the wind in his hair, birds softly singing. Everything seemed to try to hold on to a shadow now long gone. Some nights Michael would wake with a start, sure he had heard Anna calling from the living room. He would rush out, heart pounding, only to stand frozen in the dark. No one was there, just the hallway light casting its dim golden glow on the wall, where their old wedding photo still hung. In the photo, Anna smiled radiantly, her eyes sparkling as if holding an entire autumn sky. Michael, meanwhile, was looking at her with such tenderness that anyone would smile just seeing it. Truthfully, Michael had never been someone good at expressing emotions. Anna had been the sun in his life, warm, gentle, making everything easier. When she passed, it wasn't just his heart that broke, but his entire world. Friends had advised him to travel, to sell the house, to find something new. But they didn't understand. How could he leave the place where every corner still held the breath of the one he loved? Once, Michael opened their old bookshelf and a letter slipped out, one that Anna had written long ago. Her familiar slanted handwriting read, "If one day I'm no longer here, promise me you'll keep living. Not just surviving, but truly living. Don't let this house become a prison for your heart. I'll always be watching from the morning light." Michael read and reread the letter, his hands trembling. In that moment, he realized he had been living like a ghost for 2 years, a man trapped between the past and the fear of moving forward. But then, can anyone ever truly move on after losing the one they love most? That morning, light rain tapped gently on the windows, the droplets lingering on the glass as if whispering something Michael couldn't quite understand. He poured the usual cup of coffee, placed it on the table, one for himself, one for someone no longer there. But just as he was about to sit down, a faint sound from the porch made him pause. A soft scratching, then silence. Michael walked to the door. Cold air, damp with mist, seeped through his sweater as he opened it, and froze. There on the front step sat a small dog, drenched, shivering, its little body curled tightly. It looked up at him with wide brown eyes. A German shepherd puppy, clearly very young. But what left Michael breathless was the object clutched gently in its mouth. A slipper. Anna's slipper. Not just one that looked similar, it was the slipper. The familiar beige one with a small embroidered daisy at the toe, worn with age and bearing a faint scuff on the left heel. Michael recognized it instantly. It had been resting untouched beside Anna's side of the bed for 2 years. His heart pounded. He glanced inside. The matching slipper was still there. So how did this one end up outside? And why was it in the mouth of a dog he'd never seen before? He stepped closer. The puppy didn't run, didn't bark. It simply gazed at him, not with fear, but something almost tender. Michael knelt, carefully taking the slipper from its mouth. His hands trembled as he brought it close to his nose. The soft scent was still there, the same fabric spray Anna used. It couldn't be. It just couldn't. He sat down on the cold step, his mind spinning between logic and something deeper. There were 100 questions, but not a single answer. The puppy remained where it was, still shivering, still watching him as if waiting for something. Without knowing why, Michael reached out his hand. "Hey, where did you come from?" he asked softly, knowing he wouldn't get a reply. The dog crept forward, gently pressing its head into Michael's palm. That hand, one that hadn't felt another heartbeat in so long, now felt warmth, a rhythm, and something undeniably alive. Michael didn't know who this dog was, where it came from, or how it had brought with it the slipper of the woman he loved most in the world. But what he did know was this: he couldn't shut the door. Not now. Not on the one thing that had made his frozen heart stir again, even if just for a moment. Michael laid an old towel on the sofa near the fireplace, then gently lifted the puppy onto it. It didn't resist, just curled up, its eyes quietly following his every move, as if studying him. He opened a can of dog food, left over from the time Anna once cared for a stray pup. But the little one didn't even sniff it. It just sat there, head tilted slightly, its gaze not sad or scared, but somehow expectant. Michael sat in his old wooden chair. Across from him was Anna's spot, the same one she'd taken every morning, tea in hand, eyes warm and smiling. Now in her place sat a small, rain-soaked puppy, still and silent, almost as if holding her place. And suddenly Michael's throat tightened. He stared at the puppy for a long time, then without thinking, spoke, for the first time aloud since Anna's funeral. "She used to sit there every morning," he whispered, voice rough with emotion. "Sometimes quiet, sometimes rambling about things I barely paid attention to. And now I'd give anything just to hear it all again." The puppy didn't move, just blinked slowly, as if listening. "I think I forgot how to talk," Michael continued, his voice dropping into a slow, thoughtful tone. "I talk to you, Anna, in my head, every day, but never out loud. Like if I keep it inside, you'll stay a little longer." The fire cracked gently. Outside, the rain drummed a soft rhythm on the roof. Michael leaned back, eyes still on the pup curled nearby. A trace of warmth crept into his chest. The pain was still there, unchanged, but something softened, like mist settling over an old scar. That night, for the first time in ages, Michael turned on the hallway lights and left the bedroom door slightly ajar. The dog didn't come in. It simply lay outside the door, as if standing watch, or perhaps waiting for someone to return. The next morning, weak sunlight broke through the clouds. Michael opened the window, letting in the crisp air after a night of rain. In the kitchen, the puppy, now dry and wrapped in a soft towel, lay beneath the table, dozing lightly but still alert to every sound. As Michael prepared coffee, a scratching sound came from the living room. He turned. There was the puppy, pawing insistently at the base of a wooden cabinet near the fireplace. That cabinet, he hadn't touched it since Anna's funeral. Not because he'd forgotten, because he hadn't dared. "Something in there?" he asked, half joking, trying to still the tremble in his hands. He knelt and gently pulled the bottom drawer open. A soft click. Inside was a small, cardboard box, tied with a faded silver ribbon. His heart skipped a beat. He recognized the bow. It was Anna's. Michael's fingers shook as he untied it. Inside was a neat stack of papers. On the top sheet, her familiar slanted handwriting. "If I don't come back." Michael sat down, his eyes fixed on the letter, and began to read. "If I don't come back, please don't be angry with me. I know you'll be in pain. You'll go quiet like you always do and pretend to be okay. But I hope you don't just survive. Let someone into your life. Don't keep the door closed forever. I was lucky to be loved by you, and I hope someone else gets that chance, whether they're a person or a little creature that comes to you like a gift. If someone knocks, open the door." Michael stopped, his throat tight. His hand rested on the paper, and beside him, the puppy looked up, brown eyes shimmering with a wordless understanding. "You knew," he whispered. Silence lingered, broken only by the ticking clock and the dog's steady breathing. Then Michael reached down and gently stroked the puppy's head. He spoke so softly it was barely more than a breath. "Buddy?" He didn't know why that name came to him. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it had always been there, waiting. But the puppy lifted its head, wagged its tail, as if it had been waiting for that name all along. Michael sat still, his hand resting gently on its head. For the first time, he no longer denied the presence of a living soul in a house that had been cold for too long. That night, for the first time in 2 years, the kitchen lights glowed. Michael stood at the counter, fumbling with spice jars dusted with time. On the top shelf sat a brown leather-bound cookbook, Anna's. It leaned slightly as though waiting to be opened again. Michael pulled it down, its pages softly yellowed, still holding her graceful handwriting. "Creamy mushroom pasta, your favorite when it gets chilly." Michael read the note, and a corner of his mouth lifted, a simple gesture he hadn't made in so long. As the water bubbled on the stove, Buddy lay at his feet, eyes tracking his every move. Michael spoke aloud, like confiding in an old friend. "She used to make this every fall. I never paid attention to how she did it, just focused on eating." Buddy looked up, tongue out, sniffing the delicious aroma drifting through the room. Dinner that night was simple, just 2 bowls of warm pasta, one for Michael and one for Buddy, with shredded chicken, no salt. They ate in silence, but it wasn't the empty silence that had haunted the house for 2 years. It was a quiet filled with presence, breath, and a whisper of joy. The next morning was crisp and blue-skied. Michael put on his coat, picked up the leash, and looked at Buddy. "Want to go for a walk?" Buddy wagged his tail, trotted to the door as if this had always been their routine. Together they wandered through old paths, the narrow alley with the flowering vines, the cafe on the corner where Anna used to order her sugar-free latte, and finally turned toward the lake. Anna had loved the lake. She once said, "Water never keeps its reflection. It always moves on. Maybe we should too." Michael sat down on their old stone bench, Buddy hopping up beside him. He gazed out over the rippling water, sunlight shimmering on the surface. His chest felt a little lighter. For the first time, he wasn't clinging to memories. He was walking into them, like stepping into a gentle dream. On the way home, they passed the rose bushes outside the house. Anna had planted them years ago. They still bloomed, though he hadn't touched them. Michael knelt down and gently brushed a vivid blossom with his fingertips. And then, without thinking, he smiled. Not the forced, hollow smile he'd worn for others. Not a smile through tears. It was his first smile free of pain. Soft, real, a silent whisper. "I'm still here, and I'm living." Buddy pranced around his feet, tail wagging in delight, as if sensing the change in the air. Winter arrived earlier than usual. Snow fell gently through the night, blanketing the house in a soft white layer, like the thick quilt Anna used to pull over them on chilly evenings. That morning, Michael opened the door. Icy air greeted him, but it no longer felt lonely. He stepped onto the porch, hands in his pockets, gazing out at the garden, now transformed into a white wonderland. Buddy was already out in the yard, bounding through snowdrifts, his tail slicing the air like a joyful fan. He looked up, tongue lolling, and suddenly rolled into the snow. like a child discovering happiness for the first time. Michael laughed, a full, round laugh that rang out like a bell against the cold. He stepped back inside and gently placed a brand new pair of gray slippers beside Anna's old worn ones at the bedroom door. They sat there together, one pair new, one pair old, side by side, a strange but honest symbol, as if the past and the present had finally found a way to rest next to each other without conflict. Michael no longer lived as a guardian of memories. He had learned to walk, not to forget, but to go on. Every morning he still made 2 cups of coffee, but now one for him, one for Buddy. On sunny afternoons they walked by the lake, past the blooming roses, then returned to the house and read in the warm glow of the hallway lights. Lights he no longer left on out of fear of losing something, but to honor what was still here, still alive. Michael used to think he had rescued a lost soul from the rain that night, but now he knew. It wasn't him who had saved Buddy. It was Buddy who had saved what was left of him, the part of his heart once shattered by grief, the piece of his soul that had quietly shut down. Maybe he was just a small, rain-drenched puppy with an old slipper in his mouth. But in that strange, quiet moment, Michael's life took a different turn. Toward light, toward footsteps, and toward hope. At the end of this story, if you're still reading, Michael has only one thing to say. If someone out there needs a second chance, share this story. Who knows? Maybe a small soul is knocking at your door too. You just have to open it.